Hello and welcome to today's episode, presented for Digitales TV. We're going to be diving deep into President Trump's plan to reshape the federal workforce. It's a pretty big deal. And whether you're thinking about a federal job, or already work for the government, or just want to know how this could affect services you rely on. Well, this deep dive is for you. We've got some fascinating source material to unpack, including excerpts from an internal document outlining Trump's plan, and some analysis from a YouTube video by federal employment expert Armand Curé.
Yes, this is a multifaceted strategy that could have ripple effects throughout the federal government.
Okay, let's start with the big headline. Buyouts. Trump's administration is offering voluntary buyouts to millions of federal employees, particularly those who haven't fully returned to the office since the pandemic.
What's really interesting here is the potential impact. Estimates suggest a 5 to 10% acceptance rate, which could translate to a loss of 100,000 to 200,000 employees. This comes on top of attrition from the existing hiring freeze. So we're looking at a potentially significant reduction in the federal workforce.
That's a lot of people. And for those who do take the buyout, the deal is pretty sweet. They'll receive full pay and benefits until September 30th, even if their resignation is effective as early as February 6th.
That's right. So for someone considering this offer, it's almost like getting paid for 8 months while not working. But there's a bigger picture to consider. Could this lead to a brain drain in the federal government? How will essential services be impacted by the loss of experienced personnel? These are questions we need to explore.
Definitely. And it makes you wonder who isn't eligible for these buyouts. It turns out military personnel, postal service employees, those in immigration enforcement, and national security are all excluded.
This exclusion is telling. It suggests these areas are central to Trump's vision for the federal government. A robust military, strong border control. These seem to be the priorities. But what does this mean for other sectors deemed less essential?
That's a great point. It raises questions about Trump's motivations and goals for this entire shakeup. Is it simply about cost savings?
Cost savings are certainly a factor. Buyouts could save billions in the long run, even though the immediate payout will be substantial. But there's likely more to it than just the bottom line. This push to return to a pre-pandemic, fully in-person workforce could be about more than just efficiency.
So maybe it's about control and loyalty.
Possibly. Some argue that having employees back in the office creates a more controlled environment, potentially fostering greater loyalty to the administration's agenda. But is that a sustainable approach in a world that's increasingly embracing remote work? And what are the long-term ramifications of potentially losing experienced employees who value flexibility and work-life balance? Those are crucial questions to consider.
Absolutely. And speaking of consequences, let's talk about how this could impact specific agencies. The Department of Justice, or DOJ, is already facing staffing challenges. How might these buyouts further affect their work?
Well, the DOJ is responsible for enforcing federal law and ensuring public safety. A sudden exodus of experienced personnel could slow down investigations, hamper legal proceedings, and potentially weaken the DOJ's ability to effectively carry out its mission.
And what about the Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS? They're responsible for so many crucial public health services. How will they manage with the potentially reduced staff, especially considering the ongoing challenges posed by the pandemic?
This is a major concern. HHS is already stretched thin, managing everything from disease prevention and medical research to Medicare and Medicaid. Further staffing reductions could lead to delays in services, hinder their ability to respond to public health emergencies, and potentially even impact the quality of care people receive.
And then there's the Social Security Administration, a lifeline for millions of Americans who rely on benefits like disability checks. Could processing times be severely impacted by these potential staff reductions?
The Social Security Administration already faces backlogs and processing delays. Losing experienced personnel could exacerbate these issues, leading to even longer wait times for people who depend on these vital benefits. It's a worrying prospect for those who rely on the Social Security Administration for their financial well-being.
Let's not forget the IRS, especially with tax season right around the corner. What could this mean for processing returns and providing assistance to taxpayers?
The IRS plays a vital role in collecting taxes, enforcing tax laws, and providing support to taxpayers. Staffing shortages could create significant problems, leading to delays in processing returns, hindering their ability to effectively enforce tax laws, and making it harder for taxpayers to get the assistance they need.
I can only imagine the added stress and frustration this could cause for people already dealing with the complexities of tax season. We even have a quote from an IRS employee who said, "I'm feeling nervous, but we will hold the line."
That really highlights the human side of the situation. Federal employees are facing a lot of uncertainty and anxiety right now.
It's understandable. For many, this isn't just a job. It's a career, a calling to public service. And now they're facing potential job losses, a shift in workplace dynamics, and a sense of betrayal for those who are promised remote work options.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual anxieties. There's a genuine concern about the overall impact on morale and the potential for a brain drain from the federal government.
Talented and dedicated individuals might be less inclined to work for the federal government if they perceive a lack of stability, support, and respect for their contributions.
Precisely. And then there's the OPM shakeup itself, which adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
Right. The Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, is responsible for managing the federal workforce. And Trump is proposing some pretty drastic changes.
He is indeed. What's particularly striking is OPM's decision to communicate directly with employees, bypassing traditional agency channels. This suggests an attempt to streamline the message and potentially avoid pushback from agencies themselves.
It seems like they're trying to get this message out as quickly and directly as possible. And the cuts they're proposing for OPM are pretty significant.
They are. Trump is aiming to cut OPM staffing by a staggering 70%, taking it from nearly 3,000 employees down to around 870.
Wow. That's a massive reduction. What could that mean for OPM's ability to effectively manage essential HR functions for the entire federal workforce? Things like retirement programs and veterans preference.
That's a critical question. OPM plays a central role in so many aspects of federal HR. Drastic cuts like this could lead to significant delays, errors, and a reduced capacity to provide essential services to federal employees. We could see major disruptions in processing retirements or helping veterans navigate the federal job application process.
And on top of all of this, we haven't even touched on the potential legal challenges that could arise from these changes.
Right. Unions are already gearing up to file lawsuits, and this is likely just the beginning. Many of these moves, particularly those impacting worker rights and job security, will likely face legal scrutiny.
So we could be looking at lengthy legal battles, adding even more uncertainty and stress for federal employees already grappling with the potential upheaval of these changes.
This is far from over. This situation is complex, with potential long-term consequences for the federal government, its employees, and the services it provides to the American people.
This goes way beyond politics. It's about people's lives.
Precisely. It's crucial to consider the human impact of these decisions. The anxiety, the fear, the sense of betrayal. These are real emotions being felt by real people who are dedicated to serving their country.
It's easy to get lost in the policy debates and legal battles, but we can't forget about the individuals at the heart of this. These are the people who process our tax returns, ensure the safety of our food and drugs, and support our veterans.
They are the unsung heroes of the federal government, and their voices deserve to be heard.
Their experiences and perspectives are essential to understanding the full impact of these proposed changes.
And it's important to remember that this isn't just a one-time event. These changes could have a lasting impact on the culture and composition of the federal workforce for years to come.
So even if someone isn't directly impacted by these buyouts or potential job cuts, they should still care about what's happening.
Absolutely. This is about the future of our government and its ability to serve the American people effectively. We need to have informed conversations about the potential consequences of these changes and demand transparency and accountability from our leaders.
It's a call to action for all of us to pay attention, engage in dialogue, and hold our elected officials responsible for the decisions they're making about the federal workforce.
Exactly. This is about more than just jobs. It's about the values and principles that underpin our democracy.
That's a powerful thought. But before we get too philosophical, let's circle back to the buyouts for a moment. What are some of the key factors people should be weighing as they consider whether or not to accept this offer?
That's a great question. It's a deeply personal decision with no easy answers. Financially, the buyout might seem appealing, especially for those nearing retirement or those with in-demand skills who are confident they can find a new job quickly. However, it's important to consider the potential emotional and psychological impact of leaving a career, especially if it's been a significant part of someone's identity.
It's not just about the money. It's about purpose, belonging, and contributing to something larger than yourself. For many federal employees, their work is more than just a job. It's a calling.
You're absolutely right, and leaving that behind can be a difficult decision, even if the financial incentives are tempting.
It sounds like it's important to weigh all the factors, financial, emotional, and professional, before making a decision, and to seek out support and advice from trusted sources, whether that's family, both friends,
Yeah.
financial advisors, or career counselors.
I completely agree. This isn't a decision to be made lightly. There are resources available to help federal employees navigate this complex landscape and make informed choices that are right for them and their families.
And let's not forget about the potential impact on the agencies themselves. What happens if there's a mass exodus of experienced personnel?
That's a major concern. It could lead to a loss of institutional knowledge,
Hmm.
expertise, and the capacity to deliver essential services effectively. It could take years to rebuild that capacity, and in the meantime, the public could suffer the consequences.
It's like pulling a thread on a sweater. You never know how much will unravel.
That's a great way to put it. The interconnectedness of the federal government means that changes in one area can have ripple effects across multiple agencies and programs.
So even if someone isn't directly impacted by these buyouts, they can still feel the consequences down the line.
That's very likely. Longer wait times for services, reduced responsiveness to public needs, and a potential decline in the quality of government programs. These are just some of the potential outcomes.
It's a reminder that we're all connected in this system,
Yeah.
and the decisions made at the top can have a profound impact on everyone.
Exactly. And it's a call to action for all of us to pay attention, ask questions, and hold our leaders accountable for the choices they're making that could reshape the federal government as we know it.
This is a big topic, and we've covered a lot of ground, but there's still more to explore in this deep dive.
And then there's the potential revival of Schedule F, which further complicates the issue.
Schedule F, that sounds ominous. What is it exactly?
It's essentially an attempt to reclassify certain federal civil servants as at-will employees. They're rebranding it as policy and career, but the underlying goal seems to be the same: to make it easier to hire and fire employees based on political alignment rather than merit.
So instead of having job security based on their performance and qualifications,
Hmm.
these employees could be more vulnerable to political whims. That doesn't sound good for the impartiality and effectiveness of the government.
Exactly. That's the main argument against Schedule F. Critics say it could politicize the civil service and erode the principles of a nonpartisan, merit-based federal workforce.
And I'm guessing the unions aren't too happy about this either.
You're right. They see it as a direct attack on workers' rights and job security. Many of the lawsuits being filed are focused on challenging the legality of Schedule F and other aspects of these proposed workforce changes.
It all feels very unsettling for the people who have dedicated their careers to public service. It's like the ground is shifting beneath their feet.
That's a great analogy. This level of uncertainty and potential upheaval is creating a real sense of anxiety and fear among federal employees. Some are even describing it as a culture of fear.
I can imagine it's one thing to disagree with a policy or a president's vision, but it's another thing entirely to feel like your livelihood and career are at stake.
Absolutely. And it's not just about individual jobs. There's a broader concern about the potential impact on the quality and effectiveness of government services. If experienced and talented people leave, it could take years to rebuild that expertise.
It's like we're conducting a massive experiment with the federal workforce, and the outcome is far from certain.
And the stakes are incredibly high. We're talking about the agencies that ensure our safety, protect our health, and provide essential services to millions of Americans.
It really feels like this whole situation with the federal workforce is unfolding against a backdrop of, increasing political polarization.
You're right. It does seem like the swings between administrations are becoming more extreme, with each side trying to dismantle what the previous one built.
It makes you wonder, where does it end? If this reshaping of the federal workforce is successful, will it set a precedent for future administrations to make equally drastic changes based on their own political ideologies?
That's a crucial question to consider. We could end up in a perpetual cycle of upheaval and instability within the federal government, which could erode public trust and hinder its ability to function effectively.
That's a worrying thought. We need a government that can operate smoothly and consistently, regardless of who's in power.
Exactly, and this situation raises concerns about the long-term health of our democracy. If the civil service becomes a political battleground, it could undermine the principles of impartiality, meritocracy, and service to the public. These principles are the foundation of a functioning and trustworthy government.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. It's given me a much deeper understanding of the complexity and potential consequences of these workforce changes.
It's a complicated situation with no easy answers, but by understanding the different perspectives, the potential impacts, and the broader context, we can start to have more informed and nuanced conversations about the future of the federal workforce.
Well, it's clear that big changes are happening in the federal government and leaves us with a lot to think about. Does this buyout offer sound appealing? Or is it a recipe for disaster?
Ultimately, that's a question each individual has to answer for themselves. There's no right or wrong answer. It comes down to weighing the potential benefits and risks, considering one's personal circumstances and values, and making an informed decision.
We've explored a lot today, from the details of the buyouts to the potential impact on various agencies. We've also touched on the broader implications for the federal workforce and our democracy as a whole.
It's a lot to process, but it's crucial information for anyone who wants to understand the forces at play that are shaping the federal government.
As we wrap up, I think it's important to remember that the decisions made today will have lasting consequences. We need to keep asking questions, stay engaged, and hold our leaders accountable for the future of the federal workforce and the services it provides to all Americans.
I agree the situation demands our continued attention and careful consideration.
Well, that's our deep dive into the federal workforce shakeup. Don't forget to subscribe to Digitales TV for more updates, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.